So Saints have sacked manager Nathan Jones after 7 defeats in his 8 Premier League matches. First-team coaches Chris Cohen and Alan Sheehan have also left the club, as confirmed in a statement early on Sunday morning. Glenn, I think it might have been your diary of Nathan Jones that perhaps was the final nail in the coffin this week. But no surprise this morning to see that statement.
Celebrate good times. Come on. Yeah. No, I don't think my diary had much to do with it. However, yeah, it was absolutely inevitable. You are always slightly worried that it's not going to happen, but there was no way he could survive that. I suspect it had already been decided after Brentford, to be perfectly honest, and yesterday wouldn't have made the slightest difference. But you know, you think we can't go any lower, and we find a way to dig down into a new layer of sludge altogether and lose to 10 men. You know, the fact that it was Mario Lemina got sent off as well, which was another thing that made it a totally surreal day. But no, he absolutely had to go. We've all known he's had to go for a long time. Well, relatively a long time. You know, like I say, before we won those 3 games, I'd have got rid of him after the Nottingham Forest game, without a doubt. And I think Steve said he would have got rid of him at half time in that game. Which is a little bit harsh, perhaps, but no, there was no redeeming features. And when you're like that as a character, you are totally relying on your team winning, and you know, to keep people at least relatively happy. And there was none of that. The results alone were enough to get rid of him, and that's before you get into the embarrassment he caused on a daily basis every time he opened his mouth. And you know, it's a classic indication that, you know, the Premier League is such a big deal. You know, my criticism of Sport Republic is that they said the Championship was a comparable league, and it just isn't, because if he'd said all these stupid things when he was manager of Luton, it wouldn't have been national news. It wouldn't have been on Match of the Day, 5 Live. They wouldn't have been writing about it in the Athletic, probably. You know, that sort of thing.
I assume he probably has said those sort of things while manager of Luton, and we're just none the wiser.
Yeah, but once you're in the Premier League, you've got to keep your mouth in check, because anything you say is going to be blasted everywhere. And yeah, he bought it on himself from that point of view. But it's ultimately his limitations as a football coach and a football manager that have done for him. And yeah, I can't say anything other than I'm delighted he's gone. It's probably too late for us to dig ourselves out of it this season, but there's still a chance.
That's the big question I think we'll get onto later. Where do we go next, and is it too late? Alfie, I'm sure it's been a busy day for you running the live blog and dealing with speculation, but this was never going to be a Sunday where you file your match report and turn your phone off, was it? It was always going to happen today.
Yeah, no, I set an alarm for 7 a.m, 7:30, 8, 8:30, and then 9, which was all pointless in the end. So I went for 10 to 10. But yeah, like the first thing I say is that I do genuinely feel a little bit for Nathan Jones, and just on the point of that he probably did deserve a Premier League chance. The job he did at Luton was, to be fair, exceptional, and the way it sort of crumbled down around him after just sort of 8 games, I don't think he would have foresaw that. Even with the clear insecurity that he had in that seat, he never felt like he was a Premier League manager. I think that was ultimately one of his main downfalls. I don't know, like Glen we sort of spoke about there, you know, what did he say those things when he was manager of Luton? I don't know. For me, it felt like he was probably saying even more nutty things than he ever would, because he didn't really believe in himself, and he wanted to give off that character a little bit. But I think he's a better bloke than he's come across. I think it's a shame that he's sort of upset supporters in the way he has, but ultimately the football does the talking, and the football, you know, up until Wolves yesterday wasn't very good, and the performance actually yesterday was pretty decent, to be fair, up until the 70th minute. And I felt that we were going to have a nice quiet week. It might have kicked the can down the road anyway. It might still be too late regardless, but I thought 1-0, 10 men, happy days, just see it through. But there's not enough mental fortitude, I don't think, in that squad, and they need something from somewhere else, and they're not getting that from the defenders, and they're not getting that from the manager. So yeah, the one that we expected to happen, bit of a shame, but fingers crossed.
Do you think, Alfie, just before I come to you, Steve, do you think, Alfie, it was the right manager but the wrong time? And actually, if this was the start of the season where there is a bit more time, is it just that he presided over that really key period of games where we needed to pick up some points and didn't? Was it just the wrong block of fixtures for him?
Yeah, well, look, he had the easiest fixtures of the season. If we're going to talk about a block of fixtures, the games against the bottom 6, bottom 8 were all in the last 8, and they've won one of them and lost the rest of them. So it wasn't the fixtures itself weren't the problem. I think the 6-week break. I think he might have made an error coming into that 6-week break. I think he probably, and this is all pop psychology, I don't know exactly, but I think he may have not believed in himself as a manager and thought the players wouldn't perhaps take to him as they would an elite level coach like Ralph Hasenhüttl. He wanted to win them over, gave them 2 weeks off when they didn't need 2 weeks off. They needed to learn, they needed to drill. Gave them 2 weeks off because in football, time is currency. They've got everything they ever need. They've got the money and the lifestyle, but they don't have much time. So to give them 2 weeks off, they're probably buzzing with that, get them on side, but then take them away for a week-long holiday in Spain. I'm sure they worked hard, but no pressure really, no pressure at all. Nothing to mould the players, nothing to teach them what we wanted. And then they come back, Brighton. Everyone's going, well, look, we've got 6 weeks practice here. What are we going to see? And we saw something that was really not up to scratch, and that was already enough for some supporters, wasn't it? Really, they were already decided upon that.
Yeah, I know, Steve, you picked up on the fact that the first thing he did was give them that 2 weeks off and let them go away on a holiday. Great to see the corner flag as well, because we didn't get that. We were expecting that this morning. We've got the outside of the stadium, which they tend to go for these days. Loads of facts and quotes and things flying around today. 11 Premier League managers managed to get at least a point at St Mary's this season. Nathan Jones, not one of them, was one of my favourite quotes from earlier today. And somebody else talking about his 100% record at St Mary's, 4 league games and 4 defeats. Steve, where did it all go wrong for you? Was it just coming in at the start and the wrong appointment completely?
Just everything. There's no other than that 1 week where we strung together a vague bit of competency for a brief period. Basically, it's been an absolute shambles from start to finish. We've not looked like there's a plan. We've not looked like the players really know what the manager's asking them to do. And I remember speaking to had a weird conversation, just happened to be in the presence of a coach who'd coached at Premier League and Championship clubs, and one of the things that he said was that just the difference in the detail in coaching from Premier League and Championship is just an absolute world apart. Which is why the whole, coming back to what Glenn said earlier, the whole thing with Ankerson saying, "Oh well, I don't think the Championship is too far below the Premier League." I'm sorry, but that's just absolute nonsense. It's an absolute world away, and it's only managers who are able to adapt. And you kind of have to learn on the job, I suppose, if you've never managed at that level before, naturally, but I don't think he ever thought that he needed to change. I don't know whether it's one of sort of a lack of sort of foresight. So I know that in the past we've heard of managers when they're not in jobs have gone and sort of overseen training sessions done by other top managers, whether in this country or in Europe or wherever. Has Jones done the same sort of thing? Has he gone and has he phoned up? I don't know. I mean, give an example. Marcelo Bielsa as an example.
Strachan did it as well, didn't he? I remember Strachan doing it.
Eddie Howe has done it recently when he was out the game.
Did he phone some random manager up who's got a sort of wide reputation and a wide-ranging CV and say, "Can I come and observe some of your training sessions to learn?" And by all accounts, most managers are pretty receptive to this sort of thing. And it just genuinely looks as if he's never learned what's required of the level. And so as a result, that's a lack of preparation on his part. And it's a lack of research on Sport Republic's.
I was going to ask about the blame game, Glenn, to a certain extent, because it's not a job you're going to turn down if it's offered. So does ultimately the fault lie with Rasmus Ankerson and the appointment in the first place and his metrics that we've talked so much about over the last 3 months?
Short answer, yes. I mean, when Ralph finally got sacked, the name of Nathan Jones it came up pretty quickly, didn't it? And then it was a done deal. So they'd obviously been looking at him for a while. So it does suggest there was some level of due diligence done, but clearly not enough, or they just over trusted the spreadsheets and didn't really consider the levels argument that we're talking about. I mean, that was. Do you remember the Paul Doswell interview?
He was right, wasn't he? Ultimately,
the most interesting part of that was, I thought, was him talking about that mic'd up training session that the club put on social media, saying that it was incredibly basic. The stuff that Jones was sort of telling the players, and that's kind of stuck with me the whole time. And I've seen, you watch some yesterday, though we played well in terms of putting Wolves under pressure for the first hour, it was incredibly basic. James Bree at right back seemed to be out there solely to win headers that were, where Bazunu pinged the ball long to him, and it's frighteningly basic when you think about it. So that I think was his, was the downfall. But yeah, I agree with Steve. He should have made efforts to realise, and he should have realised that playing the Luton Town way is not going to work at Premier League level. You've got to, managers should be judged on what they do with the resources they have available to them, and they need to find the best way to play with the resources they've got. And he kind of, to me, hasn't done that. Yeah, we've got a 7-foot centre forward now, but we didn't have one earlier on. But we played like we tried to play like we had, and it just, I mean, if Everton had appointed Sean Dyche 1 week earlier, we'd have lost every single game under Jones, and it's just not been good enough. And he's looked painfully out of his depth since the first game. And you mentioned the break, where I couldn't believe that Lincoln City game. What was it, the 21st of December?
Yeah.
Where there was nothing. There was nothing new. There was no impetus, and that was horrifying. And then I think it was Brighton after that. That was horrifying as well. But we all said, "Oh, Brighton are a really good side, fair enough." And then Nottingham Forest, which was just the worst game ever. So, I think Sport Republic obviously have to take a massive part of the blame for appointing him. However, in my eyes, they've kind of bought themselves a bit of grace simply with the amount of money and investment that they've put into the club. And at the end of the day, as they said at the fans forum the other day, they absolutely do not want to get relegated. So, it's not going to look terribly great on Rasmus and Sport Republic if we do go down. So, again, I'm saying the same words that we said after Ralph. We've just got to trust them to get it right this time.